Guten Tag!
And welcome to an extremely powerful episode of Head to Head, because behind me are two German cars that make 1,152 horsepower from their twin-turbo V8s. We've got the Mercedes-Benz E63 AMG and the BMW M5.
But not just the regular E63 and M5.
Oh, right.
The S model and the competition pack.
And what that means is you get more stuff. Both cars make more power, revised suspension. In the case of the AMG, it's got all-wheel drive. In case of the M5, it's got a new grille. And both cars have more Überhol prestige. You took 4 years of German in high school.
Ja, der Bleistiftspitzer hat Geschlechtswoche mit das Fenster.
So you could translate Überhol prestige for us.
Überhol prestige is basically the acknowledgement that the car approaching you from behind on the Autobahn deserves to pass you.
Okay, so in other words, like if you see an Audi Fox in your rearview mirror, that has Klein Überhol prestige. Nine Überhol prestige. Okay, so if we saw like one of those diesel Audi A3s that we don't actually get here, that would have Klein.
If you're in the Audi Fox.
Okay, and if you're in either of these two monsters,
gross.
Überhol
let them pass, let them pass.
Now, these two cars are remarkably similar. They're both based on mid-size luxury sedans. The power is about the same, 575 horsepower for the BMW, 577 horsepower for the AMG. They both weigh about the same. They both cost about the same.
But do they both drive about the same?
Good thing we're at a test track, because we're gonna find out. The BMW M5 competition rushes to 60 miles an hour in 3.7 seconds before crushing the quarter mile in the 11th. 11.9 seconds at 122.2 miles per hour. But the AMG's faster. It hits 60 miles an hour in 3.4 seconds before going through the quarter mile in 11.6 at 121.8. To give you a little bit of context there, the last SRT Viper we tested ran through the quarter mile in 11.5 seconds. But once you're done with acceleration, these cars are identical. They both stop from 60 miles an hour in 106 feet. They both pull a maximum of 0.95 Gs on the skid pad, and they both run around the figure eight in 24.3 seconds. But from behind the wheel, they feel very, very different. The AMG is relatively drama-free. It's cool, calm, collected. It's a nicely tailored suit with a bad temper. The M5, on the other hand, is crazy pants. Get this thing wrong, and the rear end steps out, and there's smoke, and you're spinning. In every measurable way, the E63 and the M5 behave like supercars. But we want to know why, and we know just the place to take them.
So we're here in Riverside, California, where we come to visit our buddies at K&N Engineering. They've been kind enough to let us use their dyno. What are we using the dynos for?
Well, as we saw at the test track, in a straight line, these things are missiles. I mean, they're supercars, yet they're really heavy sedans. The BMW is about 4,400 pounds. The Mercedes is 4,500 pounds. But if you look at the numbers that they're claiming, the M5 competition, they're saying it makes 575 horsepower and 502 pound-feet of torque, whereas the E63 AMG makes 577 horsepower and 590 pound-feet of torque. Thing is, I don't believe a word of it. I think they're making a lot more power to be able to achieve those sort of numbers.
So it's going to tell us how bad the Germans lie.
Exactly right. First up is the E63 AMG S model with its hand-built M157 engine. That's a 5.5-liter twin-turbo V8. Next up is the BMW M5 with a juiced-up version of the familiar 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8. Also remember, this car is rear-wheel drive, even though you're going to see on the rolling road dyno here, the front wheels are spinning. Why? Because if the rear's going 100 miles an hour and the front wheels aren't moving, the car shuts down.
So we've run both the M5 and the E63 here at K&N.
Yeah.
What did we learn on the dyno?
Glad you asked, and I happen to have a little mini encyclopedia here to go over all the numbers. So for you numbers junkies out there, I'm going to give you the raw wheel numbers. So the AMG at the wheels, and remember it's all-wheel drive, 541 horsepower and 505 pound-feet of torque. The BMW here did 508 at just the rear wheels and 452 pound-feet of torque. What does all that mean? Okay, figure with a rear-wheel drive car, you're going to have 15% drivetrain losses, about average. So the M5 therefore makes 598 horsepower and 531 pound-feet of torque. It's pretty healthy. It's a little bit more than they said. The AMG, on the other hand, is a different story because it's all-wheel drive, so you take into account about a 20% loss through the drivetrain, for a total of 676 horsepower and 631 pound-feet of torque, which is just way above what they're claiming.
Sure.
Spoke with Frank Marcus, our technical director, and I said, it's crazy, right? And he said, yeah, you know, he goes, for modern cars, you could dial back those losses a bit, figure for an all-wheel drive car, 15%. So run the numbers at 15% for all-wheel drive, 636 horsepower and 594 pound-feet of torque. Closer to what they're claiming, but still above. It's interesting though, because if you dial it back by 5% on the BMW, figure at 10% drivetrain loss, then you're looking at 502 pound-feet of torque, which is exactly what they're advertising. However, only 564 horsepower. And Frank also said the BMWs are notoriously difficult to dyno. So if we just go to like the normal kind of accepted 15% for rear-wheel drive, 20% for all-wheel drive, these cars make a lot of power.
So taking that into consideration, even with the 20 or 15% loss or 10% loss, we've just confirmed the AMG is an absolute monster.
Yes.
The real surprise is how well BMW has sent the power to just the rear wheels.
That's a really good point because, you know, the AMG makes much more power and it has four wheels driven, yet this is only 0.3 seconds behind it in every measurement we did. So I'm kind of proud of BMW. That's really commendable to be able to go that quick in a straight line, you know?
But that's all just a bunch of number junkie stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, if you're the kind of guy that sits around in a bar arguing about cars, this is what you reference. Oh, it makes blah, blah, blah at the wheel. The purpose of this head-to-head is to find out which is the better car.
Right, and you don't even use the steering wheel, the dyno.
Exactly. So we want to know which one handles better, which one do you want to own, which one do you want to have in your garage?
Well, you've got your racing vans on,
That's
so
right.
Let's go find out.
Pretty quick, yeah.
Those are some aggressive shifts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You can feel it through the whole car.
You know, aside from the engine, my favorite part of the M5 is that transmission. It is just it's a dual clutch, but it's such a good dual clutch, and it's one of those that, you know, it can handle so much power, and it shifts so fast.
How do they even make the steering this heavy? Like there's some genuine strength required to move this thing around right now.
I think what it is they said, look, we're going to have 3 suspension settings, 3 throttle position settings, and 3 steering settings. So then the chassis engineers go out and they go, well, we have this kind of comfort around town steering, it's nice and light, and we have sports steering for when you're driving fast. And yet we have to fill up this blank, so we're going to make extra heavy. You know, that's the problem with ultimate adjustability is maybe somebody really wants to like do curls as they're driving, you know?
That's kind of the M state of mind at this point. It's always one more, 125 settings.
Yeah, it's a lot of adjustability, man. Not to defend them too much, but right. Like, let's say you're like most people, and there's like 1 or 2 ways you want to drive. They do give you the M buttons. Maybe there's like a freeway setting and like a canyon setting you want. How do you like how it handles?
I took it around the figure 8, and it's easy to throw it into a little, you know, power oversteer coming out and to catch it. So it's very predictable. I like that. But you're really only reading the steering wheel when you're doing that, I think. There's
right.
not much sensation otherwise.
Right.
It's making how much?
Oh, it's almost 598 horsepower.
Yeah, so going to 2 wheels, there's only so much tires can do.
Right. All right, so I went ahead and programmed this M1 button to what I consider to be like a good canyon route little thing. I've got the steering just in sport, which actually feels pretty neutral. A little numb, I will say. And I've got the traction control off, but stability control on, because let's live through today. And I will say this, the M5 competition package is much better than the base M5. It's a lot more fun. Things we didn't like with the last one, the suspension just for whatever reason wasn't there, and they've done a great job in this one. They revised all the components. I think what they really did is they took everything off the M6 Grand Coupe and threw it on here, and then they lowered it 10 millimeters. This thing's pretty good, although, it's you're still isolated.
What do you think is lending to the sense of isolation?
It's just because it's based on the F10 5 Series, which we know it can also be a 7 Series, could be a Rolls-Royce Ghost. You know what I mean? It's a big, heavy, well-insulated chassis. It's a lot like a GTR in that it turns and the car goes where you turn it, but
Right.
it just, you don't feel that the wheel is actually being weighted from the wheels. It's just sort of turning and the wheels are doing their own thing.
There's too much going on in between the actual tires and your fingertips.
But really, what I would change is I'd figure out a way just to suck weight out of this thing. I would just liposuction this car till it's below 4,000 pounds, because you don't need to weigh 4,400 pounds to be a legitimate performance car. You just don't. You just don't. So we're in the E63 AMG S model. Initial impressions.
My initial impression is of how nice this Alcantara wheel is. It's like at this point, my brain's already been hardwired to think Alcantara means performance.
But that could be fake. You could wrap a, Dodge Dart steering wheel in Alcantara.
Sure, I wrap my pencils in Alcantara so I can write really fast.
Right.
It just feels a little bit quicker, a little bit lighter, and it's communicating to steering that's a little bit quicker and a little bit lighter, which lends to the overall impression that the whole car is lighter. The all-wheel drive seems to just hook up coming out of corners that much faster. It just moves the whole car along quicker.
There is a sense of lightness to this car, even though we know it weighs 140 pounds more than the BMW. Even from the passenger seat, I can tell it just feels lighter. Which one do you enjoy more?
As I go through that corner, I have to say I prefer the AMG. I think the M5 might be more fun in a parking lot where you can hoon around and just smoke the rear wheels and drift all over the place. But my favorite thing in the world is just going to a nice canyon road, knowing that I'm going to come out the other side alive and not having damaged anything. You could do that more comfortably and quicker in this car.
I'm not sure I agree with you, which is why it's my turn to drive.
Deal.
Okay, we are in the AM. Jesus Christ. It really just gets off the line like nobody's business. This is a good transmission, but it needs to have a dual clutch. It needs to have that bam, bam, fast shifting power that the M5 has. We know this car makes a lot more horsepower, but you can't always use it because you can't always get into the gear you want quickly enough. So the M5 has $9,200 optional carbon ceramic rotors. This thing, just has drilled Steelies. They do bite, they just don't bite that hard at the top.
Yeah, there's a bit of a delay, but when you know to compensate for that, then they still are plenty capable.
Okay, it does squirm around a little bit under heavy braking, but again, it is a 4,500 pound car. And then, to be fair, the BMW does move around a little bit too. Although I just feel that suspension's so much stiffer.
Yeah.
And the ride's a little worse because of it. And again, some people hate body rolling corners. They want it to be like an F1 car, like corner flat to keep the aero the same. And I worry with the M5, it just stays so flat that you're just looking at a piece of glass, turning a wheel, but you're not really all that involved with the driving process. I'm just trying to think if there's anything about the driving experience in the M5 that I like a lot better, aside from the transmission. And I'm not totally sure that there is.
At the end of the day, they are both big, comfortable, luxury sedans, and then all of a sudden you can put down your right foot and be going much faster than you were a few seconds before.
I think the real story is that the E-Class right now is a better car than the 5 Series. It's easier to turn it into the ultimate performance sedan for AMG than it is for the M Division. If you would have asked me before we started, and of course I ran around saying it, I said the AMG is going to wipe the floor with the M5. Sure. It's going to be a slaughter, and it really wasn't. I mean, that M5 competition is so much better than the base M5, and it's really close to being as good as this car is. There's nothing about the M5 competition that drives significantly better than the E63. And I think we can agree that the winner of this head-to-head is...
the AMG?
Yeah, baby!